Hey there, welcome to Beauty in the Pom podcast. I'm Kiani Mills.
And I'm Andy Reid.
Two friends who have a very similar set of values, but who have taken very different life paths to end up in similar situations.
We are also business owners, parents, property enthusiasts, and bloody short on time. So we bring you this podcast to shine a light on humanising business.
Because look, let's face it, business is life, and life is business. Welcome back to another episode of Beauty in the Pom, Andy. It's always lovely to see your beautiful face each week we record these. How are you, my friend?
Very, very well, Kiani. How's the vein?
My happy vein is very happy. Thank you for asking.
Couldn't help myself.
What stays off the air? No?
Definitely not.
Okay. Well,
We are an open book policy here at Beauty in the Pom, Kiani. You know that. Then that is part of the deal of being with me. If you're part of my book, you are an open book.
That's right. Well, should we share with everybody what the vein is about? Because it might sound a little bit.
No, let's just leave it open to imagination. Let's just leave it. Let's just leave it. Let them make shit up. Gang, if you have a suggestion as to what I could be referring to, please post it into the DMs or post it on a comment when I'm sure one of the social crew will pick up on it immediately and decide to post it everywhere.
But for those of you who know me, you will know that it is what it is about.
No. Let's leave it to interpretation.
All right. Fine. Look, today I wanted to kick something off because something really cool presented itself around my little world. And I have one of my staff members who's heading off on a holiday, like a very well-deserved 3-year wait-long holiday. She is well and truly within her rights to go. But it's amazing how productive we've been, because she's been productive in the lead up to going on holiday. So I thought this was a really cool topic to bring so that we could have a bit of a chat about holiday mode. What do you think?
It's fascinating, right? It's kind of like when your kid all of a sudden you've been trying to tell them to clean their room, and as soon as ice cream is mentioned, all of a sudden the magical cleaning fairies come out to play and the room is spotless, right? It's just it's annoying. The human condition is really annoying sometimes. Are we glass ceiling ourselves because of the parameters we have or don't have or whatever, right? When you know, and it takes something like that. It takes an extraordinary event, I think you could call it, in order to, you know, shove a rocket up our arse, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I am the first to put my hand up and say I suffer from this syndrome, whatever we're going to call it, because I leave shit to the last minute all the time. And then all of a sudden there's a real need, like even something as silly as like this morning, right? I vacuumed downstairs in the house purely because I knew that we were having people over this afternoon. So there has to be a reason. And this is where like the incentivization part comes in. You talk about children. We are big children, but I suffer from it too. So, I mean, we all do it. I wonder why.
Now, you could sort of go in two directions, I reckon, with this. You could either go down a path of, vacuuming is one of the more mundane tasks on the planet. How the fuck are you supposed to be getting motivated by needing to do a vacuum, right? Which is fair, absolutely fair. Or you could take it down a track of, well, is that a sign of a lack of discipline in oneself? And there aren't enough parameters. There aren't enough sort of
incentives
in rules around how you want to live your life. Standards is probably the word I was looking for, because we're not banging out this said member of staff, right? Because ultimately we've all done it. We've all fallen victim to it. And how many of you that are listening to this have uttered the words akin to, why does everybody want to talk to me the week I'm going on holiday, right? We've all said it. I know for a fact that I've said it. It was no coincidence that I'd go on a crazy mad listing tear 2 weeks out when I know I'm going to be away, but these listings need to go onto the market and whatnot, and I'm not going to be around for them and blah, 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 blah. You all catch my drift. And I'm sure you will all concur that we've all done it from time to time. So we're not bagging around in any way, shape, or form. But it really does pose the question, is it a thing of we need incentives, or is it a case of we need to raise the bar a little bit on our standards?
And this was something where, again, no, we're not putting down my gorgeous little employee, but it is I wonder if we brought this level of enthusiasm into the workplace on a normal week, would we be more productive and would we be getting more things done? Or is it purely, as you've said, because we know we're not going to be here for 2 weeks, we're cramming 2 weeks worth of work into the week before we leave so we can have a holiday without having to think about it, or not come back to an absolute shit fight because we've left so many things behind. So
absolutely. And I think what it can boil down to is, what is driving us. So far from, causing any concern with the employee, is it a culture problem in the workplace?
Good question.
That's creating the lack of enthusiasm around wanting to get shit done in that sort of level, in that sort of manner, right? I think, as you lot may have heard already, and Kiani certainly knows, the first person that I generally turn to in terms of, assessment is myself. And I think that in this case, we do need to unpack that culture piece because, look, let's face it, we're all human. We're not going to be able to be like Captain Enthusiasm every single day of the week. But what could we perhaps do in our culture to provide that level of enthusiasm that's going to at least get us to that sort of 85% on a regular basis, as opposed to running around with the hair on fire because we're about to go catch a plane?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's got me thinking because I guess in our day-to-day roles, we've all got job descriptions. Some of us may or may not have KPIs based on the role that we play. But even from a basic job description, it's like words on a page of this is what you need to do in your employment time with us. Bang. There's not so much. And then we get into the rhythm of doing our job and we do what we need to do on a day-to-day basis. We do generally, as the work comes, we do what we need to do to service the work. The menial tasks kind of get flipped to the wayside. We do the important ones first or the fun ones first, whichever way we mold it. But it really is, I guess it becomes a bit of a mundane, hamster wheel kind of thing because we just do what we need to do to get the job done. And we're not really implementing that job description any further because we've learned our job. And as we know, it's like anything in life, things drop off because, we don't need to do that, or, we've done it another way, or we could do it quicker this way by dropping half of it off and things like that. And it's got me thinking purely because I'm onboarding a new employee at the moment and his job, while yes, it's a little bit more sales-based, we've got his job description broken down into tasks that must be done weekly or daily or weekly or monthly that he then has to check off and say, yes, I've done it. Yes, I've done it. Yes, I've done it. So he's always running, I guess, at a level of expectation where we can help him succeed. But I know in my role, I don't have a job description. I don't tick off boxes every day. And, this employee, for instance, she's not in a position where she's got, KPIs where she has to meet daily or weekly or monthly. But depending on who we are and what our jobs are, maybe there are some things that we're letting fall by the wayside because we just become a bit complacent in our job. And because we don't have to have that focus on doing all of it all of the time, we're letting things drop aside, which means we're almost technically entering holiday mode while we're still working without even the incentive of having a holiday. Does that make sense? You following my lead?
Yeah, to a degree. I do agree to a point, right? And again, you're spot on with respect to the fact that yes, sometimes our PD, our job descriptions are, they are black and white for a reason, right? That's the robotic mechanics of your job. They are the things that create functionality in your role, right? What I would argue though is that's got nothing to do with the culture because your job description is effectively this is the part of the machine that we want you to be. This is the functionality of that part that will help the machine work, and that is what you'll be primarily chosen to do, right? I would argue that the real if we're really going to sort of create a culture that has that level of incentive, I think one of the first things we need to do is actually learn what is an incentive to our staff, right? So, and if you went through all of the staff that you've got, Key, and would you be able to answer what truly makes them feel incentivized to do their gig? Is it money? Is it security? Is it recognition, adulation? Da 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 da. It's different courses for different horses, and I think as business leaders, I think one of the very, very first things that we need to learn is what is it that lights your fire? Because let's be honest, right? Your job, it can be exciting. There's a lot of pen pushing, right? There's a lot of administrative stuff that would probably drive me nuts, right? But for your staff, there's some great bits, but there's some stuff that just needs to happen. It's not going to be a Shakespearean level of inspirational, right? So what can we do within our culture to learn, to make sure that we've learned about our staff to the point where, right, I know that doing this task isn't the most exciting thing in the world, but can we tap into that incentive piece in terms of what we've learned about them in order to make it happen?
I think it's a really good point. A couple of things in terms of, like, absolutely every single person would like to be incentivized differently. I've got people that are pure born salesmen. They just want to see dollars in the bank account. Then I've got others who sit really high in recognition, but recognition as well comes in so many different forms. So you do have to be really, I guess, broad with the offering and understanding your employees. But the reason why I mentioned the detailed job description and the KPIs and the structure of it is a lot of the reason why a lot of the culture slips down is because people don't know what they're supposed to be doing. They don't know what they're expected to be doing. And some of that real kind of culture comes from, as an employee, even understanding and knowing I have done a good job, or I have met the expectation, or I have done the bare minimum, or I've gone above and beyond. There is such a murky, because as an employee, you've got an idea of your job description, but because you're not on it every single day, you don't know if you're hitting or missing until you have that performance review and they go, oh, I'm really upset about this, and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, what? I'm so surprised. No one mentioned anything. Shivers. So that for me is the real transparency and clarity for the individual. Even for me personally, like, mate, I would love to know what I had to do all day, every day, so I didn't have to think about it. That would just make my mind clear on the job and know what I need to do, where I stand and what is expected of me, so that, as that kind of, recovering perfectionist, so I know how and when I hit the ball out of the park, so that can be, my little ego stroke on the back of the pat on the back, either way.
Yeah.
But a cool little tool, there's a couple of cool little tools that we can implement. As I've spoken about before, I get all of my staff to do the Clifton Strengths. So the Clifton Strengths is it's an assessment that you do online, and it brings out your strengths in order from 1 to 34. And that helps us identify through a strengths coach who determines all of this. How do people want to be spoken to? How do they want to be managed? How do they need assistance? How can they be communicated to? And then also to, how can they be rewarded? Where do they feel that they are most benefited? So for some, it might be recognition in a group setting. Others, it might be a private one-on-one. Some may be a pay rise. Others might be a bonus. Others might be a holiday or a dinner or something like that. So there are some really cool like performance algorithms out there, strengths tests that can be done with staff to do this. And it's not expensive, not by any stretch of the imagination, but understanding and even just asking the question. Ask the question in either a performance review, an annual review, or when you're hiring someone. How do you want to be recognized? Like, what is it for you? What, as you said, what lights your fire? It's an important question. I don't know if anyone, do they ask it?
Well, yeah. I mean, you've got all these tests under the sun, but I'm really, really glad you said at the end, you could just ask them. You just ask them. You say, "So what gets you going? What gets the wheel go? What gets the wheel racing? Right? What floats your boat?"
Yeah, yeah,
So because the thing is, the problem, I think one of the inherent fears that a lot of business owners have when they ask this sort of stuff to their employees or potential employees is that they are automatically worried that it's going to equate to some sort of financial bonus triggered, blah, 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 right? When, for example, like if any of my previous bosses had have asked me what floats my boat, and I'd have probably said sport or something like that, then, getting a seat in a corporate box that they've hired for a something or other, you've got Andy like a kid in a candy store. I'd be happy as a pig in shit. I really, really would. So the vast majority of the time, everybody frets that it is just a monetary sort of thing, and a lot of the time it's not, right? Look, yes, in the sales side, granted, a lot of the sales type of people are likely to have some sort of financial drive, and that's absolutely fine. Not knocking that. Been there, done that. But for I'd say for most staff, there'll be something beyond the money. Money's just a vehicle, right? And so that money, even for the salespeople, the money will be a vehicle to get a fancy car or a boat or something of that description, right? So it could be a case of getting a boat, getting like one of those car driving experiences, getting like a Mercedes driving experience. Say, look, although this is the goal of what you want to buy, this is the car you really, really want. Why don't we go do a track day so you can feel what it's like? And then, geez, if that's not going to inspire them to keep kicking on, and cracking on, then they're clearly bullshitting themselves, you or both. So I like, but this holiday mode thing, right? What do we think within ourselves? Let's come back to that original question. If we're to think about ourselves as people that suffer from this holiday mode, which we all do, where do we think is it I'm leaning towards it being a standards thing that we set for ourselves, because you think about it in terms of money, right? So you earn a certain amount of money, chances are your lifestyle is going to drift up to whatever that amount of money is. You'll live to your means, whatever that is, right? But you could argue that there is inherent lack of discipline within doing that, because you're not either planning for the future or putting money aside in order to build greater wealth down the track. The vast majority of us live to whatever our means dictates. Yeah. So is it a standard / discipline thing, or is it a case that we just don't feel inspired in what we do?
I'll throw a third one in there, purely thinking about when I first started working in corporate, and I had no idea the way the world worked, but I was watching and observing people who would go into holiday mode like weeks before they'd even gone on holidays. So it's like, when kids at school, like the last week of term, they just watch TV, a movie all week, and do zero work. They might clean the classroom or pick up rubbish or whatever, but literally movies every week. I watched people do that, and I'm like, oh, maybe that's the way you do it. Maybe that's how we do it. So can it be a learnt behavior as well? Because I know I was absolutely, we're talking, my most important job was photocopying and filing. So I didn't have any huge responsibilities on my shoulders, but I was watching these women and men who had these full responsibilities, who were delegating out work well and truly, like 2 weeks, a week before they were going on work, just to make sure that they had a cushy lead into their to their holiday. And therefore, that was what I was taught was acceptable, until I became responsible in my duties and went, okay, no, I can't live like that. I'm going to do what my employee did, which, looking at the vast opposite too, I'm glad that she is the way she is. And she, in her mind, she said to me, Kiani, I just don't want to go away with a to-do list. I need to get it off my desk. And thinking back to the way that I was taught in a law firm. I'd much rather the to-do list to be done. But yeah, there is that taught element of being introduced to the workforce and watching others do the way that they do it. So maybe that's good.
You might be ringing a bell there slightly. I think I'm thinking back to I definitely wasn't a model pupil at university for sure. And we had various projects that had varying degrees of time in order to get shit done and all the rest of it. But I reckon you could be onto something there, because I was shit we've got weeks. Yeah. I've still got a couple of weeks. It's all right. I've still got a week. I still go out on Monday, be all right. Yeah. I've still got a couple of days. So I'll just pull a couple of all-nighters. And then it's like 7:38 a.m. and I'm frantic when the due date is 8 a.m. that day. And it's just, and I reckon there is a strong degree of learned behavior in this, right? Is it a Western thing to sort of take advantage or take for granted our position of luxury, of comfort, of so on and so forth, in order to get shit, before we start getting shit done? We have to have that fear of loss, that fear of having something taken away from us, like kids and ice cream and stuff, right? We can even go back even further into parenting.
It's all our parents' fault.
Oh shit, yeah. And I do it. I do it all the time. Like I say to the kids, right, get your room clean or we ain't gonna have ice cream. You eat your dinner or we ain't gonna have any ice cream. 100%. That threat of scarcity is something that we naturally go to, don't we? Yep. Right. 100%. And for your employee, for us, whenever we go into holiday mode, the threat is the fact that you're not going to be able to go away and enjoy yourself in comfort, in calm, in peace, in tranquility, knowing that you've got all your shit done because you're too busy stressing about the shit that you didn't get done.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yep.
It's parents' fault.
It's all our parents' fault. Problem solved. Thanks,
and
Mom.
I'll apologize to Eliza and Callum in advance because they probably have the same issue already.
Well, Kobe's in year 7 and 100% I'm on his. So I get an email every day from his Google Classroom. So I know what he's got due and what's outstanding, what he needs to do. He's had this feasibility report that he's been doing for 2 weeks. And I'll go, come, mate, do a little bit of it. Yep, Mum, no worries. I'm doing 20 minutes of it. Yep. Estimated completion time is 2.5 hours over 2 weeks. Yep, Mum, I'm doing 20 minutes of it. Yep, Mum, I'm doing 20 minutes of it. It's due on the 10th. So tomorrow, we're on the 10th, the 9th of November at the moment, but whatever. It's due tomorrow. And I was like, mate, how far into it? He goes, I've got about an hour and a half left. I was like, okay, so when exactly are you going to do that?
That is a boy after my own heart. I like that. I like that kid.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, okay, so what's the plan, mate? He's like, oh, I don't know. I'll finish it.
I hear him.
What am I teaching him? What am I training him? He's had 2 weeks to do this. But mind you, as I said at the start, I put my hand up. I do the same thing. I'm like, yeah, I've got plenty of time. But like you, uni, got plenty of time. I'll do it later. There's something about that last minute rush that I need to have the adrenaline to want to do it, to then be focused enough to ignore everything else. Because I'm a shiny butterfly kind of person. I'm like, ooh, the phone's ringing. Or, oh, I got an Instagram notification. Better check it. I'm obviously, as we've spoken, I'm creating my own beast here. Oh. I'm trying to teach him something, but maybe what I'm showing him is very different to what I'm trying to teach him.
And it all kind of comes full circle back to a point that you made about performance reviews, how we leave things a period of time before we actually provide any sort of clear direction. I think as leaders, as parents, as business owners, I think that we don't provide enough guidance / we don't have enough accountability on a regular basis, whether it's because we're busy and we've got our own shit to do, or whether it's because we can't be asked, or whether it's because we fear the over managing of someone, right? And we fear that thing of being that whole big brother, big sister, like lurching over them, making sure shit's getting done. And we provide our people or our kids with too much responsibility too quickly. Until they've proved that that is the behavior that they have. Why? Like, we don't do that. We don't get them to prove that that's how they rock and roll. We just say to them, right, that's the parameters, crack on. And then we get shitty at them when they're leaving it till last day and we've got an hour and a half left to go. Like Eliza was doing a fucking music homework in the car on the way to school that morning. And I went to go have a crack at her, right? I went to go and say, that's ridiculous. And I had a massive fucking flashback, like you would not believe, to A. Reed Jr. In the passenger seat or in the back seat of the folks' car, trying to sneakily get some fucking homework done because I knew I hadn't done it. And I tried to not show my folks that I hadn't done it. Like, guilty
100%.
as charged, man.
Oh
Guilty as charged.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what it is. As business owners, we need to get over ourselves with that whole, we don't want to cotton wool them. We want to give them, we want to give them enough rope and blah, 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 blah. Bullshit. I think, we need to have in that first instance when we're onboarding people, when we're getting people into different roles or new roles or whatever it is, there needs to be a real strict level of accountability until they've shown that clearly they know what they're doing. Now, that might only be a week, and you've gone and you say to them, oh, fuck, you got this sussed. Let's drift it out. Let's catch up again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And then okay, look, you are nailing it. Let's do it monthly.
I love that so much, and actually implementing that at the moment. And the words and the terminology that I heard someone say, and I've stolen it, is set them up for success. So if we pose it in a way of, I am going to set you up for success and I am going to mollycoddle you for as long as it takes for you to be successful, just like a mother bird does. It will nurture them in the nest, and then it will feed them, and then they will get strong enough. And then when they are ready to fly, they will fly. But we bring on people, show them a friggin' piece of paper that's got black and white words on it and go, now fly.
Yep.
With friggin' what? Literally going to fly and die, and it's that old mentality of sink or swim. Are we genuinely giving them a roadmap to success, or are we, as you said, giving them enough rope to hang themselves? And we wonder why employee turnover can get high. Culture comes from it as well, because if you're not supported, you're not going to want to be there. You're not going to do your job. You're going to flick into holiday mode, even if you don't have a freaking holiday planned. Honestly, it all comes back together. And for me, I truly believe that if we set them up with a clear job description, clear KPIs, clear expectations of even from a daily, weekly, monthly, as you said, push it out, onboard them properly, then we may be able to avoid I don't know, what do you call it? Like, they get complacent and disinterested and
bored.
Bored. That's a good one.
Yeah. They get really bored. I mean, and like I said, we can't expect them to be all guns blazing 24/7, right? It ain't gonna happen. And for any of you that do own a business, it is really unfair to expect anybody to care for your business as much as you. And you got to get over that shit real quick, FYI.
And also too, just quickly, Andy, I'll pop in there, because you also, as a business owner, we can never expect anyone to do it the way that we do it too. So one thing I got told very early on with my business consultants was, and I've mentioned this before, be okay with 80%. Your 100% as a business owner, as this being your baby, as being so, like, every waking minute we think about this thing that is our life, that is feeding our children, that is putting food on the table. No one's going to think about it or act like that the way that you do. So we can't put our KPIs or our expectations onto someone else at our level. We need to drop it a little bit and keep it realistic.
Absolutely. But I think we do. We've got to take a little bit more care with our little baby birds before we bloody boot them off the edge of the cliff or out of the nest.
But I also don't think it's too late to bring them back around. There is nothing wrong with turning around to the group and saying, guys, I acknowledge that maybe there hasn't or wasn't enough training first time around. I'm going to make a conscious effort to change things. I'm going to restructure a couple of things. I'm going to re-onboard some of you. I'm going to give you all the success in the world to succeed in a way that I believe is going to be the best in your interest and the best in my interest as well. Like, there's nothing that hurts changing things halfway along the way. Just because maybe you didn't do it that way in the start part doesn't mean you can't do it now. So it's not oh, you missed the boat. Oh, well, sorry about them. Sorry, John, you don't meet the criteria. It's no. Our job is really, and I think more so in those ones that are struggling or that have shown holiday mode, they're the ones that we need to go into bat for and go back and maybe go, hey, you know what? Maybe I didn't give you, maybe don't say it to them, but mentally, maybe I didn't give them the best of me. Maybe I didn't give them the best onboarding. Maybe I could do more to salvage this employee and give them the roadmap to success now. Better late than never. If not, as you said, you are welcome to be successful elsewhere. But why not?
Why not? Because, us leaders are humans as well. And you might have onboarded a client when you're going through some shit yourself, right? Whether it's business stress, home stress, life stress, whatever the case may be. And there is no harm in having a bit of self-reflection on that and going, you know what? I didn't give that person the right energy. I did not give them that warm, leadership that I expect of myself. Yeah. And I think, retracing your steps with that is entirely legit. Now, if you're an employee, Kiani, right? Let's flip the script and because there's accountability on both sides here.
Yeah.
And so we need to talk about the employee. If you're an employee, how would you approach this whole topic of holiday mode in the sense of, providing you've got enough awareness to realize that, you know what, I'm feeling fairly uninspired in this role. What steps do you think you could do as an employee to sort of change your fortunes with that?
Yeah, good question. And I think it comes back to, what we were simply saying before, and I actually went to say it before, but didn't. And I'm really glad that I didn't. With an employer, how we were saying, just ask how they would like to be recognized or
motivated.
Turning around and asking or seeking feedback as an employee to your employer, hey, how am I doing right now? I'm a little bit unsure if I'm on track. That asking for feedback is absolutely okay. And that's a very small part of it. But also too, the happiest days of my life is when I have a staff member sit down and say, hey, I'm struggling a little bit. I feel like I need either a little bit more, a little bit less, whatever it might be. Like if as an employee, it's a hard conversation because you don't want it. Number one, you don't want to seem as though you're not capable. Number two, you don't want to lead the conversation down a path of going, hey, I'm walking out the door. But I honestly think, and it goes a bit to that, we don't ignore it. Have the conversation early because it doesn't have to be a scary conversation, but actively ask for feedback. I think that's a big one. And then if you are needing more or less or change or whatever it might be, speak up. 90% of the time, if you're not happy, they're probably not happy with you either. So if you really want to stay in this job and you enjoy the company, give them the opportunity to also meet your expectations, because as employees, we have expectations of our employer. They are, in some instances, our mentors or, our like our family. They're the ones that sit above us. They're the ones that are here to protect us and look after us. And yes, they pay our salary and yes, they provide a safe working environment, but a lot of the times it does become more than that. So I think as an employee, if your needs aren't being met, then absolutely put that back onto the boss and just go, hey, look, also, this is the job description that I was promised. I'm yet not learned or trained or whatever it might be. I'm not doing these areas for whatever reason. Or, hey, this is a job description, but none of this stuff's on it. Can we talk about this? To me, it seems quite straightforward, and it's a freaking scary conversation to have. We all know that. But having these conversations and opening up the line of communication sooner rather than later, I feel like really would put them in a bit of a better position.
I think outside of, wanting to be happier in your job, you could even take it if you're not fussed about your job, right? Because people sometimes do a job because they want money, and that's not what drives them is a job or a career or whatever. However, you're going to be spending a hell of a lot of your time there. So if you're not driven to enjoy your job, surely you can be driven by wanting to enjoy your time there, because you're going to be there for a period of time. So even if the job's not overly important to you, your time certainly is.
And especially if you've got, well, we've all got family, but if you've got children, especially, we spend more time at work than we do with our kids.
So you might as well enjoy the bastard, right? Like you've got to enjoy yourself to a degree. And the thing is, if you don't give yourself an opportunity to enjoy your work, that's on you. Right?
Yeah. This is that self-responsibility piece. Take responsibility.
That's on you. That's not on the employer. At the end of the day, you applied for the role, right? The employer deemed you suitable for the role. There is a collective accountability to make sure that you are successful and happy in that role. As much the leaders can do all these bloody psych tests and disc profiles and all that stuff under the sun, right? But again, like what we said before, is employees, you can just ask. Employees, you can just say something, right? Ultimately, there aren't many employers in the grand scheme of things that are mind readers, right? I don't know if there are any professional mind readers kicking around. And you as
please.
Oh shit! But I think, but we need, but employee. If you're an employee and you're not happy in your role, you have always got a choice. And I think that because for example, in the UK, I know a number of people that are not happy in their roles, but they are not wanting to rock the boat because of the fact that they're worried about whether they'll be able to get another job, whether they'll be employed, blah 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 blah. Yes, we get that. Me and Key aren't saying that you should be so blasé about your position and what have you. However, having said that, it is up to you to say something if you want to be happier in your role. And it doesn't have to go, we're not saying you have to go up to someone and say, your boss, and say, hey, I'm not happy, I'm pissed off, I want to have a chat. That's probably not the right way to go.
Yeah.
But saying to your employer, hey, I feel that I feel that I would be a lot more productive if I could have a chat about my role and how I'm working within that role and how I can sort of make myself enjoy the role a little bit more, or something along those lines. You can always go into it with some sort of level of productivity. And any employer that doesn't appreciate that, well, you got to wonder whether they're worth following anyway.
Well, and that's the big thing too. When I used the term before, be successful elsewhere, that can cover both sides. But if you do recognize that you're in holiday mode and you're a little bit nervous about having the conversation, and the way that you premised that was so perfectly there. If you're working into a hard conversation, this just isn't with an employee, with a boss, this could be friends, family, anybody. If you direct the conversation with the words, I feel, there is no attack on the other person. So it's very likely that the comments that you are making instantly in that person's brain are like, okay, they feel. That's an emotion. That's an emotive thing, but it's not aggressive. So it's, I feel as though I could be much more productive, as Andy said, blah, 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 blah. Or I feel as though my needs aren't being met, or I feel as though I'm not reaching my full potential. Could you help me get there? None of that is aggressive. So any hard conversation you have can really, like, the lid can come straight down just by coming from a sense of, I feel. Try it.
Absolutely. And I tell you now, any employer worth their salt that hears that from an employee will be like jackpot, ding, 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 ding. I've got someone worth investing into here. Guarantee your team. If you go with a constructive mindset around wanting to make the most of your time in that role, and you take that mindset into those conversations. Now, obviously, you don't want to go into that conversation, just, go walking up to John, the boss, and say, hey, boss, I feel that blah, 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 blah. You want to set the parameter, you want to set the scene, you want to ask for a few minutes of their time at a time that is inappropriate, and that they can have their minds open. Because again, if they're stressing and they've got a contract in their hands that they're stressing about, or they've got a crisis that they've got to manage and whatnot, and then you come up to them with the I feel line, probably ain't going to end well for you.
You may not just get the response you're looking for, correct?
Probably not Be
considerate. Yeah, definitely be considerate. It's a tough.
Now, Kiani, I would love to be able to bottle this shit up. I really, really, much like a number of things, it would be awesome. And if we knew how to do it, you and I would be billionaires, most likely. And we could be one day. However,
we'll be one day.
In the meantime, what do you think we can do? Because this is frustrating for both employer and employee. It's frustrating for everyone, because it's so stressful, and you end up, if it is you that's going away, you end up getting so wound up that it takes you longer to relax. It eats into your holiday, and it's a pain in the ass. The employer, naturally, it's a pain in the ass, because you're like, why the fuck didn't you do this beforehand? So if there was an ability, if we could bottle it up, what would be the ingredients, do you reckon? What could be the one or two things that would give us at least a chance of being able to engage holiday mode that little bit more?
Yeah, good. This is a good question. I've been kind of pondering over this through the episode. And I think based on what we've said, I guess to start with, from my perspective, it would be, don't be afraid of change. If you are, as an employer, going to change the way that you onboard staff, the way that you manage staff, the way that you performance manage staff, don't be afraid of that. If it is coming from a genuine place, then those changes will be embraced by the employees. And if they're not, then maybe that employee isn't right for you. As an employee, I think, again, we come back to courage and being brave. It's, yes, you are employed by that person, but you're at work more than you're at home. These are the people that you spend every single day with. So if there was going to be some ingredients, I'd say there has to be, remove the fear of change and create a bit of courage to instigate these conversations to start with. But also, too, there's got to be a lot of accountability and personal responsibility, because I think sometimes we see employers have a certain expectation and employees are totally different, and all of a sudden someone's not doing a great job, but as I referenced right at the very start, do they actually know what they're supposed to be doing? So I think there's a lot of ingredients from my perspective, but yeah, the three are fear, courageous, and then clarity. Make sure that there is clarity around the role. What are yours?
I love it. And I think from a cultural point of view, creating an environment in which it is safe to challenge the status quo as well. I think for employers, that for me would be tremendously critical if you want to create an environment in which people feel empowered to maybe make some changes that can improve their productivity through the week. And of course, the more that your employee feels vested in the overall success, the overarching success of the business, then they are way more likely to buy in with a greater degree of enthusiasm.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where it comes, like, lead by example. Don't be afraid. And this is, we do this with our children. Don't be afraid to turn around and say, hey, I'm really sorry I didn't handle that well, or I'm really sorry I haven't given you clarity until now, but I'm going to be better, do better, implement better. And therefore, you're kind of getting them on board with you. So you're changing together. So it doesn't have to be all right, this is the way it's been forever, but I'm going to change my mind today and do. It doesn't have to be a dictatorship. It's I'm going to admit maybe I didn't do the best job of, supporting you in this journey. So I'd like to make a change, and I'd like you to be on that journey with me. How does that sound? Great. Don't be afraid to lead by example. And sometimes that means that you have to be vulnerable first. We're the leaders. It's kind of a job.
It really, really is. Hey, Kiani, we could also just get a hypnotist in and brainwash everyone into thinking they're going to go on holiday.
Can we still do electroshock therapy? Is that still
like Clockwork Orange or something, like their eyeballs open and stuff like that?
No.
Morbid. That's a bit morbid. Anyway, Kiani, let's before we start talking about real weird alternative methods
torture if not okay,
each other to do work, let's bring this one to a head. Holiday mode, gang, you got to be aware of it. We all know it's there, we all know it exists.
Acknowledge it. Yep.
Acknowledge it, and then just have a think about if there's the one or two things that you can bring into your game, whether you're an employer or employee or a sole trader, that can perhaps let you tap into that holiday mode a little bit more often. On behalf of Key, myself, Beauty and a Pom, speak to you again soon, team.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are very grateful for your time, and we really hope that we've provided some value.
Follow us on Instagram if you've liked what you've heard, and if you have anything that you want us to talk about, things that might have been bugging you but you've not quite had the bottle to really bring it out into the open, send us a DM and we'll happily bring it to the table.